This podcast is brought to you by Micro Center. Check out all of Micro Center's fall savings events with their incredible CPU bundles they have going on right now at the links in the description. And also check out the other links there for them as well. And then also, this podcast is brought to you by Minis Forum and the UM760 Slim. Use offer code Broken Silicon to get $30 off this fantastic little mini PC and a lot of their other fantastic products as well. And we'll talk about these sponsors more later. But for now, let's just get on with the show. Welcome to Broken Silicon, a gaming hardware podcast. I am your host, Tom, and today I am joined by my co-host,
Dan.
How are you doing, Dan?
Pretty good, I think. How are you doing?
Oh, today was one of those days that just, again, reminds me of why I'm happy I moved to Nashville. It's like beautiful, fall leaves, and 79 and sunny. Just wearing a t-shirt, walking around, and it's still fall with the dog at the dog park. I don't know. I looked at it's like 50 degrees where you are in Minnesota right now.
Yeah, that-ish, I guess.
It's not, which isn't terrible, but you know, it's. I appreciate the fact that fall here is warmer and lasts until almost January, and then winter is 2 weeks and goes away.
Yeah, I mean, the other fun thing that we're going through now is we have the fall back, which we complain about every year on this podcast.
Yes, we do. I forgot that was even a thing. My girlfriend told me last night. She's like, "Oh yeah, we get an extra hour of sleep," and I was like, "Well, good."
It gets dark an hour earlier every day.
And yet, I started finishing up the script today at 5 p.m. You know, this is on Sunday for everyone listening when we're recording. And I went, "Oh, yep." So now it's just dark at 5. Great, love that.
Love how we keep doing that every year, and I don't know. Every time it happens, I'm going to complain about it.
Yeah,
and I'm never going to stop.
All right, though, let's get right into the corrections. Kaladik writes in and says, on Broken Silicon 280, you described the Horizon Zero Dawn remaster as only having updated graphics and new NPCs. The primary difference, though, a lot of people think, is that they originally used generated head and limb movements during conversations, which often came out incredibly weird. And the remaster has done over 10 hours of motion capture to replace them. Yeah, right, so sure, it's more of a remaster. I mean, I guess... I guess if there's new NPCs, updated graphics, and they did motion capture, I guess that's enough that it's more than just a slight improvement, I guess. But I still think the major point that I made holds, which is when people ask why are they doing remasters and doing these things so quickly, I think this is Sony's way of stemming price drops, like trying to get to a more Nintendo model where things hold their value over time, which is harder to do with games with realistic graphics, which most of Sony's games are, because you can look it up. There's PS1. There's articles of the PS1 Gran Turismo, and on the magazine cover it says almost photorealistic, and it does look very good for a PS1 game. Kind of looks like PS2, or even better in some ways. It certainly did not look photorealistic to me though in that picture. Like they're just blowing away a car really looked like a car, and not like a cardboard box, 4 cardboard boxes stacked together.
I do feel like racing games tend to be like a gen ahead of every other game when it comes to graphics, though. So, yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, I guess that's a good point. I mean, I do remember with Horizon Zero Dawn, when it initially came out, that was one of the things people talked about all the time. It
was because this is a blind spot for me. I don't remember this.
Like, I remember it being a big thing in reviews talking about it, that like, when you're talking to NPCs, some of their movements look really weird and robotic. So I guess they're getting rid of that criticism that what they had in the game.
Yeah. I don't know. I imagine for its time it was fine. It just hasn't aged like, The Last of Us graphics or something, right? And that's what this is for. But, and again, just finishing my point, like the Nintendo model of we don't want to lower prices. Sony will. They're not insane. But I think what they want is a game comes out for 70, next gen maybe 80, who knows. And then over time, it would become 60 and then 30 and then 20. And then eventually it's like, well, they want, look, this game's 6 years old. You want it for $10. And they go, no, we're going to keep remastering The Last of Us 1 so that we can sell it for $30. Like it's going to cost us the fourth of the cost of a development of a game, but now we can keep selling it forever at 3 times the price. So I think that's the model. And I that would explain why they would put that effort in so soon, because they want it to age well now. And I don't think we should be surprised if there's like some little update they do and then they delete the old version and they're like, all right, it's still $30. Or if you have the original, it's still just $10 to get whatever PS5 or PS6 update they've recently done. Although knowing Sony, what do you think, Dan? Do you think there's a chance? I'm just realizing this, like a PS5 game, what would be a good example? Let's say Demon Souls comes to PS6 and they just do a remaster again of it, $10. Do you think they might like go, okay, but if you have Horizon Zero Dawn from PS4, it's $10, or it's $10 if you have it from PS5 to update it to PS6. But if it's on PS4, it's $20. And just every gen they add $10 to it. Because now that I say that out loud, honestly, that wouldn't surprise me though.
No, I guess it wouldn't for me either. Like, Sony seems to be into that right now. I kind of hope they stop being into it, but that's just what they're up to, and I don't think they have all that much competition to make them worried about it. Like, I mean, I don't know. They all seem to be, these platforms seem to be less and less directly competing with each other. Like,
they're all indirectly, and there's more of them, but no one is like this anymore.
It's
like,
it's not 360 PS3 anymore.
No. Yeah, you're seeing that in a lot of markets, which on the one hand, you know, we want more competition that's direct to lower prices, and really innovation is, I think, something people are missing here. I mean, you can't tell me PlayStation wouldn't have more games on PlayStation 5 if they had good competition.
Oh, yeah.
It's not even the price or that thing, really. That concerns me far more. But, you know, then on the other hand, you go, yeah, but from a business perspective, like why? Like, even if you're a car company, wouldn't you want to focus on this segment of cars the most, so you're not always directly trying to compete with? You can kind of see a lot of companies kind of going into their own directions a little bit, because it honestly just makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, let us move on to something that does not make sense with story number 1. Arrow Lake releases to horrific reviews. All right, so first I'll quote from Hardware Unboxed, then move on to some editorialization. All right, this is his conclusion. So there we have it. This review has had a chaotic mix of results that often don't seem to have make much sense. Clearly, Intel has a significant number of issues to resolve with Arrow Lake, and while we didn't expect them to flawlessly execute on a new platform and CPU architecture release, we had hoped for a much more polished product than this. As it stands, gaming performance is inconsistent, to say the least. Overall, this is very disappointing for a next-generation flagship product. If Intel can't make significant improvements, Arrow Lake could end up being a poor choice for gaming. And indeed, the results are in, and they are not looking good for Intel. Intel's Arrow Lake CPUs, by and large, losing gaming to Ryzen 7000, 9000, and even to 13th gen Raptor Lake. At best, we see parity with the usual gaming CPU, though. The i5, for example, Ultra 5, being especially bad. It even loses to Zen 3 in gaming occasionally, which, again, we have to remember, it's clocked lower than the Ultra 9. So the Ultra 5 is, I mean, it's just not competitive with any recent generation in gaming, really. Meanwhile, productivity seems to be a haven for at least the Ultra 9. However, those results are impacted by Arrow Lake being great in benchmarks, less great in real apps. Indeed, some averages still found Zen 5 faster on average in application performance compared to Arrow Lake, and therefore AMD's 16-core AM5 CPUs are still being seen as the go-to for light workstations. And most troubling, though, Arrow Lake launched with massive instability issues after having tons of instability issues with Raptor Lake that lost trust in consumers. Confusion around APO being on or off by default was also a problem. There were crashes with the integrated GPU, which I guess if you have to disable that for it to boot in Windows sometimes now, so you just can't even use the integrated graphics stand. And anti-cheat software flagged Arrow Lake security features as cheats and booted people from online games. Thus, finally, we do have to close this by asking the question, why did Intel launch Arrow Lake now? It doesn't improve their competitive position. It doesn't improve their margins. It's treading water in performance, and it costs, far more to manufacture. Well, need to be sold for less than what Raptor Lake was when it came out, probably. So we can't help but note that Meteor Lake seems like Bulldozer. And again, what does that mean? Arrow Lake seems like Pile Driver, not a Zen 1 moment. All right, Dan. Of course, talk to City about this for like an hour. But here's your chance, Dan. What do you think of Arrow Lake?
I somehow seeing this as the first story. I forgot this was in our news cycle this week.
Like a couple of days after we recorded the last episode. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if I'm remembering correctly, when I talked about it last, I was speaking with the slightest bit of optimism. Maybe I can't remember anymore. But yeah, that's all gone. I obviously think some of the issues are related to Windows, so I think it's going to get better over time, but better than this is still pretty bad. And I don't know, it looks like this thing is 2 or even 3 generations behind in a lot of contexts. And
well, they're the one who decided to call 14th gen a generation, so it is,
yeah. And they decided to try to punch up their numbers by showing off synthetic benchmarks, which obviously don't always translate to real world performance. And that seems to be true in spades with Arrow Lake. But yeah, I remember like talking to you the day Arrow Lake came out. I think what I said, and like this isn't like some form of protest by me, but I almost don't want to talk about Intel anymore because I just don't really know what there is to say. They can't execute on anything. Like I don't know what there is to even discuss anymore when it comes to behind the scenes stuff, leaks, rumors, all of that. Like I just don't know what there is to say about them anymore. If they make a good product that launches and it actually does what they say it's going to do, great. Maybe in 2 or 3 generations they'll have enough goodwill for me to like even have assume anything they say is credible. But at this point, Intel is just a nothing company. Like they can't execute on anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, if anyone's wondering, I believe, what was it? Was it on the Die Shrink? Maybe I don't remember if it was me talking to you or if I said it on a podcast. But the day Arrow Lake came out, I was told by one of my retail sources that, like, by the way, the volume isn't there, and no one's going to notice because no one wants to buy it. Like, they said there were some locations at this major retailer where they didn't get anything but like 2 Ultra 5s or an Ultra 7. Some locations had 1 Ultra 9. And they said then they knew some people at other locations because, you know, this person talks around with people across locations in the country and said that, like, no one knew anyone that bought one, though. Like, one person said they bought, like, I think the Ultra 7 and no motherboard. Like, that's it. That's all they could report. And did you see the report that came out that I think it was probably whatever the German one is, Mind Factory, I think, said, they couldn't report a single sale. Like, this is the Micro Center of Europe, or one of the Micro Centers of Europe. Not one sale. Not one.
Well, this reminds me, I thought this was hilarious. I saw some Reddit post of a person that was excited about they got, I believe, in the Ultra 5, the 265K.
Oh gosh, that's probably the worst one, relatively speaking.
And it was hilarious. Literally every comment was just like, why did you buy this?
Yeah.
And it turns out the person is into overclocking RAM. And that's the only thing that he wanted to do with it. So.
Yeah. I mean, look, that's a thing you can do. But I don't know how much that really helps performance compared to previous generations. Like, it made a decent difference with some of them.
Well, yeah, this person was literally just like, I do this to drag race. And it's like, if that's what you like doing, I guess go for it.
Yeah. But I don't know. I don't really know what much else to say. I mean, you know, obviously this didn't quite make it into the news cycle that me and you were talking on before. You know, I talked about the initial reviews a lot with Techia City. And then after that, I guess the only other things to add is more data has come in. It really doesn't seem to be selling absolutely well at all. Intel's reported earnings, they were disastrous. It's something I'd posit that, like, I think is worth thinking about is, I mean, is Intel going to be able to beat Raptor Lake performance until 2026? It really feels like a bulldozer pile driver situation to me.
I mean, yeah, I have no expectation that they're going to like seriously beat Raptor Lake anytime soon. Or I mean, who knows? Maybe they could with Panther Lake, although I don't remember what that all is shaping out to be right now.
I leaked that. At least what I'm recently hearing is single-digit IPC increases. I don't know about the clock speeds yet, and then better efficiency. But, that might be okay on laptop, but on desktop, they're, as of now, I'm told, still using the same Meteor Lake S IO tile. Just platform, multiple tiles. And that means that all of the inherent latency issues with Arrow Lake will still be there with Panther Lake. So it's like when I'm told Panther Lake is, 10% better, 20% less power, is it going to be 5% better, 10% less power on the desktop version? I mean, I guess maybe at that point it'd still probably lose to Zen 5 or now we're tying Zen 5, which will have been out forever on a cheaper node with a cheaper layout. I mean, I already saw the 9900X going for like 360 on Micro Center. So AMD is making up for their ridiculously blundering launch by just, look, Zen 5 is almost already as cheap as what Zen 4 was a few months ago. I mean, so I don't know how they compete with that.
Well, AMD lucked out by they blundered and Intel met them with a...
Hold my beer.
Yeah, Intel just, if this is a game of chess, AMD accidentally lost a knight and Intel flipped over the board because they thought they lost after that for some reason.
That's not a bad analogy. Jensen Wang, not anti-competitive, writes in and says, how accurate is it to say that Arrow Lake is 2 nodes newer than Raptor Lake when it also comes from a prior generation of Intel where the process technology was crafted to support the CPU itself? This time it isn't. Also, Arrow Lake is still disappointing, but how do you account for how many nodes having the manufacturing process and silicon die so tightly connected count for? Well, I mean, look, 10 to 6 nanometer, that's a jump. 6 to 4, 4 to 3. So that's 4 node jumps, arguably. Now, Intel's 10 nanometer was rebranded as 7 nanometer. So I don't know. I maybe we could count it as 8 nanometer, But I'd still suggest that seems like at least 2.5 node jumps. And then if you account for the fact that some of the tiles obviously use older nodes than TSMC 3 nanometer, which is what the compute tile uses. Yeah, but so does AMD. AMD uses 6 nanometer for their IO die. So I don't think you can make the argument that because Intel's using some of the cheaper silicon for other parts, so is AMD. And from that perspective, I think that you should at least count this as 2 node jumps. Don't you, Dan?
I mean, yeah, that's fair. And yeah, that entirely speaks like that could be where any meager gains they had could just be the silicon or the node.
Yeah, and I mean, put it this way then. AMD got a 5 to 20% performance uplift. I mean, in some apps, 50%, How? With like half a node jump. They didn't even change the IO die. Intel, 3 node jumps, arguably? Regression. This is like a disaster.
Yeah, and a complete...
This might be worse than Bulldozer.
Yeah, and a completely new architecture, like just completely throwing their old stuff out. It seems like it. I mean, I guess they did a good job, and that it doesn't use 400 watts anymore. But I really don't know if that's really speaks to any of the huge efficiency gain they achieved, rather than it is they're just not overclocking this like crazy anymore.
Well, exactly. So that's funny. That's something Brian brought up on the last episode. He goes, they claim they have better efficiency, but from what I can tell, their architecture just didn't clock as fast as they wanted it to. And they were like, oh, okay, so we're going to say it has better efficiency.
Which makes me wonder, did
they actually intend this or were they forced to do it?
Yeah, if they could have gotten this bad boy to 6.3 gigahertz, would we have a 285 KS?
Yes, I think we would. I think we would. And even then, I don't know if it would have across the board beat Raptor Lake. If it was clocked 10% faster, it probably would have been like a hair better. And that still wouldn't. I don't know if that would really be a better situation if it would be still using 400 watts to do so. I don't know.
I mean, I guess I prefer this over that hypothetical, but both are bad.
Yeah.
I don't really. Both of them would result in me saying, don't ever buy this for anything.
Mm-hmm. AI Fish AI Wrangler writes in and says, looking ahead to laptop, with as bad as Arrow Lake looks on desktop, are OEMs really going to try to sell this even with Blackwell discrete? Well, there was a rumor that came out that a lot of upcoming Blackwell laptops are paired with 14th gen. So I don't know. Maybe I think I reached out to an OEM. I don't think I've gotten a response. No, I haven't. But maybe I'll have more feedback for you guys next week or the next time Dan's on or something, and I'll say, yeah, I don't know, OEMs are rejecting this. I mean, they hated Meteor Lake. I can't imagine this is getting them all jazzed up.
I mean, at least it has more than 8 threads this time around, so I'm sure it'll get some degree of buy-up.
It'll be a bigger deal, too, for laptop. I mean, its integrated graphics are like double as good, compared to what Raptor Lake had, which means, maybe slightly better than Meteor Lake. I think probably slightly better than Meteor Lake. I forgot what it was. I think it was like a slight tick on the Alchemist Plus architecture. Meteor Lake is what I was told is in it. It's not Battle Mage like Lunar Lake has. And it is a lot more efficient, I think, at the power bands it's at, for the most part. So it'll probably be better in laptop than on desktop, but it's still also very expensive. I don't know. And its competition's never been harsher with Qualcomm in the race now and Strix just walking away with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the story is usually a little bit better looking in laptop, like when it's a truly disastrous launch than desktop. So, yeah, I bet you'll find some of it, but I don't know why you would want to get this over a Zen product.
My suspicion is that OEMs just have all of this still, Alder Lake and Raptor Lake, which they rebrand Alder Lake as 14th gen all the time still, like oversupply. And it's ready. It's here. It's ready to go. And that they're going to launch first Blackwell laptops, probably a lot of them with that. But then that's because they're waiting to do a quarter 2 refresh or something with Fire Range. Like if you're doing a high-end gaming laptop, you want Fire Range. That's Zen 5, basically desktop and a laptop, people. Which now you have one of those in a motherboard, actually, where you are right now. You have one of those mini forms boards. You're gonna you're a much better laptop if you use that than you use Arrow Lake, I suspect. Yeah. And it's probably gonna be a lot cheaper too. So I would suggest that maybe this rumor we're seeing too of like Blackwell being paired with Raptor Lake is, Raptor Lake's literally in a warehouse now. They're ready to get rid of it. And then once they do that, that's when they shift to Zen 5. That'd be my guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be a lot preferable to OEMs than them using Arrow Lake. Like, that's all I have to say.
Yeah. TMC Payton writes and says, howdy. So we saw with the launch of Alder Lake that Intel had issues with anti-cheat and program compatibility. Now you're suggesting we're seeing similar issues in gaming with Arrow Lake. Is there more historical precedent that I'm missing for a CPU architecture update to cause this? What does this pattern suggest for Intel, gaming, Windows, and software support more broadly? Well, Alder Lake was a really big shift on Windows. So I think, and I don't remember it being a huge issue for long. Like I believe they patched that quickly, right? And for the most part, Alder Lake was stable, whereas Arrow Lake, it just sounds like almost nothing works. Like I think Wendell and Gamers Nexus maybe said that. Oh, and then also I know Kit Guru, Leon at Kit Guru did an excellent video outlining. You just basically have to disable the iGPU to get Arrow Lake to work, to be honest. Like, that's far worse than what we saw with Alder Lake. And because we've already had to deal with Big Little, I don't think you give them a out this time. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't think it is just Big Little. It's probably something with, I don't know, something else triggering anti-cheat. And the fact that after having a ton of experience launching basically the same overall architecture, the Meteor Lake platform, if you remove the CPU cores, it's basically the same. And that worked. And then Lunar Lake worked, as far as we can tell, for the most part. They've already had experience making Big Little work. My answer is, why is this so problematic? Like the stability and the anti-cheat issues is they're running on fumes. I don't think they have the personnel to support the software anymore. Yeah,
because there really isn't a coherent reason why. Like Meteor Lake should have been the test run for this.
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me.
I know the anti-cheat software is also overexcited sometimes, so I'm sure that issue will get fixed. But yeah, this Intel really just can't get it together. I don't know.
And again, I think they've laid off people. I think the people there are happy they took their snacks away, and are not happy they took their snacks away. And I think some of these teams are running on fumes. That's what I think. Gary No Sugata writes in and says, Intel takes an arrow to the knee, but will they even notice? Desktop Meteor Lake was canceled, but Arrow Lake doesn't seem that viable as a product either. I think it needs a 20% price cut and a lot of bug fixes to become viable at all. Were Intel forced to manufacture it to use up their wafer supply agreement from TSMC, you think? I think Intel needs a new CEO who is willing to aggressively reform the company from top to bottom. I've seen many excellent tech companies fail over the years. I don't want to see Intel join them, but it just seems like that is where they are heading. I think they thought Arrow Lake was going to be a lot better than this. I know we've said this several times with Intel, but I think they did. They thought this was going to be better. I think things started to sour a few months ago as I started getting the canary in the coal mine reports of like, it's not going well. But I do think there is something to, they just had to use up these wafers because they signed this big wafer agreement with TSMC for N3B, not even like the fixed 3 nanometer. That tells me that Pat just walked in with a giant checkbook. Again, like what was it, like 3 years ago? These reports came out, they were going to TSMC. And they said, we're never going to have, and this is right when Intel was coming off of those 10 nanometer capacity issues. And they were like, we're never going to have capacity issues again. And we're not going to let AMD beat us in node technology again. So whatever it is, whatever the node is, even if it's not perfect, give us the best one you can promise us will be ready now. And now they have to use it. That is honestly what I think. Although I do hear that, look, they canceled the 20A node. I'm told that the 20A versions of Arrow Lake performed worse than the TSMC N3B. So it wouldn't have been better to be on their own, except that maybe costs and capacity issues would be less of an issue.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I definitely agree, though, with Carrie's point that they probably need a new CEO. Like, Pat does not seem to be working out.
Yeah, I've seen a few articles sent to me, too, by Carrie and Carbon Cry. The knives seem to be coming out on that one. So, well, I guess we'll see how that develops. But there are people in Intel saying that, too. All right, well, let us move on to a launch that is less problematic with story number 2. AMD launches the Ryzen 7 9800 X3D. Last week, AMD revealed the long-anticipated redeemer of Zen 5%, the Ryzen 7 9800 X3D. In all honesty, not that much was surprising about the reveal, as we knew the X3D was coming for weeks now due to leaks out of this channel and elsewhere. But hey, these leaked specs have now at least been confirmed. We can now officially 100% say the 9800 X3D will have 8 cores, 16 threads, 5.2 gigahertz boost clocks, 4.7 gigahertz base clocks, 104 megabytes of cache, a 120 watt TDP, and, well, apparently a $479 MSRP. Indeed, the only surprises are that AMD believes they can de facto sell the 9800 X3D for substantially more than the 12-core 9900X, which, again, at Micro Center, I checked before recording, is currently $360. So there, I know the MSRP hasn't changed. AMD, who pretends they never change, but you go to Newegg, I think it was like $382 or something. AMD is just openly saying we're going to charge more for an 8-core with Vcache than we do for a 12-core. Although, and I wouldn't be so sure this won't work out, though, because I think this is going to be the premium gaming chip everyone wants to buy. And the other surprise was that Vcache is now on the bottom, which apparently in interviews, AMD confirmed they wanted to put the Vcache on the bottom since Zen 3, but they didn't really feel they had the money to put in the work to move things around and flip over the design. But that is one of the reasons they can clock it so high now, is because that was acting as an insulator over the top of the die as it interfaced with the heat sinks. So yeah, they've been wanting to do it for a while. Now they can do it, and they have the money to do it, and it seems to yield much higher performance. But anyways, how much higher performance? Well, AMD claims an 8% improvement over the 7800 X3D, or 20% over the Ultra 9 285K. But additionally, and again, this is being recorded before official reviews are live, but I've reviewer data from a few friends of the channel. So I'm just going to tell you what I've already seen, and we'll just drop this a little early before the reviews come out so we can be part of the discussion. In 1080p, the 9800 X3D is 5 to 10% faster than the 7800 X3D, and 12 to 18% faster than the Ultra 9 285K. Now remember, I have access to a couple reviews here, not all of them, so I can't tell you what overall conclusions will be. I already guess. Most reviewers are going to say it's the best, it's a little more expensive, but it delivers. Not quite as much as we were maybe hoping, but in other games, it's crazy faster. Like I think I saw some just insane ones, or AMD is at least claiming some insane ones with Cyberpunk too. I forgot what it was. Like they claimed like 50% faster in some parts of the game than the 285K or something. So yeah, I mean, look, AMD claimed 8% and 20%. I'm seeing like 5-ish to 10% and 12 to 18%. But That's just the reviews I've seen. It wouldn't surprise me if one review found it above AMD's numbers. Also, I've noted that if you really turn down settings or resolutions, again, this is why it matters. Like, did you benchmark 1080p Ultra, medium, or high? The lead goes higher than what I'm telling you I've seen. And in 4K, there isn't a big difference in multiple reviews I saw. But I will say this. I think that's just misleading because the RTX 4090 is clearly bottlenecking this CPU in even 1080p to an extent, or it's more of a bottleneck in a lot of games. And there are some games where you actually need the extra performance where it way overperforms. That's the games you'd want to buy it for. In fact, I even noted, let me open these up here and I'll have Gerard put them on screen as examples. Obviously, I'm not going to share who's talked to me, but what I can do is show you an example of what I mean from a 7800 X3D review. If you look at the 7800 X3D review, so this part here is from Tech Power Up. I believe I noted here that this thing is like almost double the performance of a 5900X. I think it seems like 60, 70% faster. If you go to the average for the review, it was like 40% faster. And that's because there's a lot of games where just every CPU is getting 200 frames per second. And I have another one here from, was it Assetto Corsa Competizione? Probably said that wrong. Where the 7800 X3D is, what is this, 50% faster than the 7600X. Zen 3 isn't even on the chart. It's probably half the frame rates. So I think when the 5090 comes out, we're going to find this is closer, better than AMD's numbers. I think it's worth remembering that the 7800 X3D, AMD said it's 20-30% faster. Initial reviews, it was like 10-15%, but over time, as games got harder to run, it did age 30% faster. And so I think that's going to happen again. And rounding it all up, there you go. AMD is launching a chip that is not a budget king by any means compared to the $200 5700 X3D or a $100 Alder Lake i5, which I think is probably the best budget chip right now, or even arguably a 9700X that costs $200 less and comes with 32 gigabytes of RAM at Micro Center. So you're not getting you're not getting this to be a budget hero. But it is the gaming performance king. It is the most efficient CPU on the market, and it's probably going to be the best gaming CPU you can buy until 2026.
I mean, I think the $480 price point is, or I say $479 price point is just them setting the price at what the 7800 X3D is selling for right now.
Yeah, I have a picture I'll have Gerard put up. On eBay, the 7800 X3D is selling for over $460 last I checked.
Yeah, and on Newegg and on Amazon, which Amazon has this listed as our number one overall pick, they both have it priced at $480.
So they're like, yeah, this is the price it is on the street from the previous gen.
So if people think that $480 is asking too much, well, that's what people are currently buying 7800 X3Ds for. So I think it will maybe depress the price of the 7800 X3D to an extent, but I don't see any reason to think why the 9800 X3D wouldn't sell out at $480. Now, I'm not even saying that's necessarily like smart price, like good pricing comparing it to the other CPUs you can get, but people want it. People want it more and are willing to pay more for a 7800 X3D than they're willing to pay for most of the Zen 5 lineup right now. So I mean, that's, I think, why they're doing it this way. And yeah, this is just, it's 8% better than a 7800 X3D. Cool. The people will definitely buy it at that price.
And in multi-threading, folks, it's substantially faster because all-core boost is wildly higher than the previous one.
And it's unlocked, right?
Yeah, and you can overclock it. I don't know. Well, that is where we'll just have to wait for like 5, 10, 20, 30 reviews to come out to see what people are getting in overclocking. But from what I'm hearing, it seems pretty easy to get it to 5.4 gigahertz if you push it. So, I mean, you're looking at an all-core clocks like, what, 20% faster than Zen 4, add a little bit of higher IPC. And you can see why this would, a higher all-core boost than the 9900X. You can see why a lot of people might really choose this one because now it doesn't have any weaknesses unlike last time.
Yeah, I mean, I was hoping to see slightly higher numbers for the gaming performance than what it got, but at the end of the day, it's still so much faster than its competition. Its real competitor is the 7800 X3D, and I don't know, depending on how far the price falls for that, maybe I would recommend that over this one. But
If
that's
all you're doing is gaming, but honestly, even if it was like $400 versus $500, so 20% more, let's just say on the street, the difference between them, its multi-threading is like 20% or more faster. And in like AVX 512 apps, might be like 50% or more faster. So it's like, well, I would almost consider getting it as my next workstation PC because the all-core boost is so high. The multi-threading efficiency is like the gain you get in multi-threading from how well SMT works right now with Zen 5 is so crazy. With I think it's a dual front end or whatever for the core. It's like almost acting like two cores. Like, I know someone's going to get mad at me that I said that. I know it's not actually almost acting like two cores. Calm down. But I almost wonder if like it is fine for workstation use for a lot of people anyways.
I mean, it probably
and that's
is.
the differentiating factor really with that in the previous gen.
Yeah, and people act like when discussing it in reviews, like 8-core is like a slouch. I mean, it's not. So
as they say, this ain't your daddy's 8-core, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so what else was I gonna say about this? I mean, I don't really know what much else there is to say. I also want to point this out too. It's something I brought up before, but I just want to highlight, like, I've been calling on this since Zen 3. Like, I think the 8-core with Vcache should cost the same as the 12-core without it. Like, you have real weaknesses here, especially now that it boosts higher too. And like with the 12-core in a lot of apps compared to an 8-core, and then you add Vcache, I really think they're really the same tier, just one's better at some things. But to anyone who would say, well, that almost makes the 12-core useless, there's a part of me that almost agrees with you. I don't know who has the money for a 12-core who can't get a 16-core unless it's like way cheaper. But I think we need to consider the economics of this 12-core. From what I've read, they tend to give you like a golden sample yield for one of the 8 cores or one of the 6 cores in the dual CCD models, the 9900X, 9950X. But then they give you a pretty bad one. They tend to get rid of their worst yields for the secondary one because it doesn't matter. Like, if you need high single threading and boosting, the one that the golden sample CCD is going to handle that for you. And so I don't know that's necessarily bad yields, but certainly not as good as probably a 9700X is going in that second 8-core yield for a 9950X. So from that perspective, all right. So hypothetically, let's say the second 6-core CCD for the 9900X could be used for either a 9600 non-X eventually, or that. A 9600 non-X is going to sell for what, $200? Or we take what would be 2 of those and sell it for the price of them combined or more, and we actually only had to use one IO die.
Yeah.
So as long as the 12-core is cheap, but if I actually think it makes sense in their lineup, but I think it's time they admit it shouldn't be worth remotely as much as they think it should be worth. The only reason the 3900X got away with that is because it was crazy. There was now a 12-core you could get for $500.
Yeah, I guess the economics, I guess it makes sense. Like, they have dies that they're not going to, that you wouldn't want to put in a 9600X. So we can't just have twice as many 9600Xs.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like, yeah, this is just a way to make more money off of what would otherwise go in a budget 6-core, you know? So, but again, it should cost the same though. I really do think it should. I really think it's time for AMD to, well, QH Freddy writes in, why is AMD trying to push up the MSRP on X3D parts when they keep showing no intention to maintain MSRPs for more than a day to start with? I mean, I think it's somewhat fair criticism here. I mean, it just shocked me, like, seeing the 9950X going for like $570, 9900X for like $360. The 9700X, it's like almost $300 now with 32 gigabytes of free RAM. Like, why didn't you just go to the price it should have been the whole time from the start and get good reviews? AMD, how much money did you actually make in the beginning? But I don't know. I do think the X3D is going to command this price at first, probably.
Well, I do think the answer lies in the fact that the 7800 X3D is already selling at $480. I don't think there's any question that the 9800 X3D will sell at $480.
Like,
now, maybe it'll drop in price in a few months. Like, I hope it does, but I don't really know why it would if people are buying the last gen part at that price.
I really hope they don't make a 9900 X3D. All rumors are that they're going to, though. I just don't think that makes sense.
Good for you, AMD.
Make 9600 X3Ds. You could probably sell those for $350, more than the 9700X. That would be the i5 gaming budget killer. And then just make people with money, get the 9950 X3D. I don't know. I just think we'll see. But also what we're going to see is an ad from a sponsor who is Micro Center. Micro Center is, of course, sponsoring this episode like they often do. When you join me, Dan, and well, here we go. Micro Center fall savings are here, Dan. Their deals are crazy, especially with CPUs right now. They have, I did look this up ahead of time. I actually can't believe some of this is that cheap now. Alder Lake i5s that come with 16 gigabytes of RAM for $140. A 70, I mean, that's the budget build. I mean, a 7700X that comes with 32 gigabytes of RAM for $250. It's like, what, a $150 7700X? Or even some of the high-end stuff has surprised me. They have the 7950 X3D that comes with 32 gigabytes and motherboard discounts for $580. So this is like a near flagship gaming 16 core that comes with free RAM and like money off a motherboard if you buy it. And then the 9950X is even $570 already if you're just a workstation builder. At least that's the last I checked. Who knows? Maybe it's even cheaper by the time this posts. So if you're for some reason still not excited as well, Micro Center's new Santa Clara store is coming in early 2025. As always, new customers that sign up for early access get a 128 gigabyte flash drive for free. So yeah, check out all of those deals. I think every time we do an ad for Micro Center, Dan, I'm like, I mean it. I think now's a good time to build a PC. I double mean it this week. I mean, good Lord. An i5 with enough RAM, enough for 140. And I'm pretty sure you can get a motherboard discount with it. I mean, it's...
Well, those motherboards can't be too expensive anymore, right? Maybe they are. I don't know.
I mean, there's still kind of like a $100 floor down there. So, I mean, it's still like, it's, I don't know. It's shockingly ridiculous. That's why I said too, like the 9800 X3D can't be considered a budget king when you can get a 8 core for half the price that comes with free RAM. But if you don't need the best of the best, especially if you're doing mid-range builds or even high-end ones with a 9950X right now, there's never been a better time to build a PC for years, at least in this regard, when you say so. Yep. Support Moore's Law is dead. Click on those links in the description. Even just doing that helps. And check out Micro Center today. Alrighty, let us now move on to story number 3. AMD Strix Halo pictured, and specs have been confirmed. Quoting the video cards, quoting my article, as revealed earlier and confirmed through various test leaks on platforms like Geekbench, Strix Halo is primarily focused on workstation laptops for now, with no clear indication that the chip will target the gaming segment specifically. According to Moore's Law is dead as well, AMD is expected to debut the Max Pro series for workstations at CES 2025, while gaming variants may arrive in the second quarter of the year. So yep, Strix Halo is nearing its launch, and thus its positioning the product strategy is being solidified at AMD. We can now confirm with more certainty than ever that the flagship Strix Halo, but the Halo of the Halo, if you will have 16 cores, 40 compute units of RDNA 3.5. They're targeting 120 watt TDPs. They come with included, so not upgradable, 8,533 megatransfer LPDDR5X. So that's 273 gigabytes per second, by the way, which is similar to a 4070 laptop chip. And it should trade blows there for Indeed with a 4070 laptop chip. Strix Halo will be revealed in CES 2025. That's right. And then there's also 32 and 64 gigabyte variants launching first. Second half of next year, 128 gigabyte variants are launching, which again, for like workstation people or AI people, this is a graphics card that can use therefore up to like, I don't know what it is, 64 gigabytes total or more. That's just insane. I know it has less teraflops than what the 5090 laptop will have, but I have to imagine there's going to be a lot of workstation and AI people that just choose this because of the amount of RAM it comes with. And then also, I have been told that there might be a small form factor rollout of Strix Halo. If sales are very good, they might produce more. Then you might see minis for mini PCs with something that has 64 gigabytes of RAM built in. And
that would be
compete with next-gen consoles a little bit. Not a PS5 Pro, but not that. Probably pretty close to a PS5 base. That's pretty cool.
That would be a very good gaming PC, like a very good gaming mini PC, though, or something. Like, that would be really cool.
Yeah, just one GPU, unified memory. In my experience, APUs have the most stable software compared to if you have a CPU and a GPU system. But yeah, so it's pictured. We know it has 2 CCDs. We know everything about it pretty much. What do you think, Dan?
Well, we've been talking about it for 2 years.
I think 2 years, yeah.
So there's not too much more I really have to say about it. I mean, yeah, this thing with 64 gigs of RAM would be an awesome gaming PC. I obviously think they're going to target the workstation market more heavily
because they have no
at first,
competition
but-
there. Like, there's nothing to compete
Well,
with
yeah,
this from Intel.
I mean, this is just a new type of product, really.
Yeah. Well,
I mean,
it's competing with Apple. That's why they
True.
copied
Well, yeah,
Apple's naming to a ridiculously shameless degree. But on Windows, they have no competition. They don't.
You're right. This is a new type of product for PC. And I don't know, the M4 has, or I should say Apple M series has gotten a lot of praise in its own right. I'm sure this is going to be very well received, assuming it doesn't have a terrible buggy launch, which, AMD isn't above doing that, so we could see a bad launch.
I find that unlikely. Strix Point's already out. That has RDNA 3.5. They've gotten out the kinks in like Zen 5 by now, pretty much.
Yeah, it's probably unlikely.
And this was supposed to come out early this year. Like, I leaked in my initial Strix Halo leak, I was like targeting early 2024, but that might slip to late 2024. And then I had to report, I don't know, it's 2025, like a year ago. So this thing should have had its time to figure it out.
Because these were, to my memory, they were basically supposed to be two dies that coincide with each other.
The Strix Point, Strix Halo. Yeah. What I was told by someone at AMD is that originally Zen 5 was all 3 nanometer. That's it. Like, I think it was like 3 nanometer. Maybe not on desktop IO die, but on laptop, 3 nanometer IO dies of different sizes of compute units, and then they shared 3 nanometer chiplets. That there's all 3 nanometer, and then they went, 3 nanometer is being delayed. We're having issues with the fabric. Let's make it monolithic in 4 nanometer for Strix Point and Ryzen 9000. But then I don't actually really know why, but it sounds like with Strix Halo, they just thought it needed to do the initial concept. And so if TSMC 3 nanometer was having issues and they needed more time to finish it, whatever, we're going to take more time to finish it is what they concluded.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, this thing will have had the better part of a year for all of the hardware in it to mature. So yeah, I mean, it should be a smooth launch, and I hope that they target or try to go for a fair number of gaming laptops for this, because I think it would be, it could completely change gaming laptops. Like, it's not a low end thing anymore. It's the thing that people have wanted an APU to do since APUs have been discussed. Like, it's actually like a mid-range graphics card in an APU. That or even just the cut down version of it is, I think, all most people need for a gaming PC.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is that were it to launch even mid this year. I'm already thinking of things in terms of 2025. I think it would have been more insane on the gaming front, because that's where you'd go, okay, this is at a 4070 level and takes up half the space, uses half the energy of a combined i7 plus, NVIDIA laptop. This would have been like, before AMD would have successfully taken a ton of laptop market share, at least around when it's happening. So you'd easily be comparing this to i7 plus 4070. Fortunately, next year it's going to be i7 and Blackwell, or honestly, like maybe Fire Range and Blackwell, and that won't look as flattering as it would have been. It's still going to look good. It's still probably going to have RTX 5060 performance, maybe even a little better, included while having all of the workstation benefits. But that's why they're focusing on workstation now, I think, because they know they have no competition there. It would have been like that in gaming if it launched a year prior, but it's not.
Yeah, I mean, and it's unfortunate that it's not, because now it would have been like a full step ahead of wherever any other APUs were at the time, and now it's like half a step, I guess. But
well, I mean, it's more than a step ahead in performance, but it would have been like 5 steps, but it won't be anymore.
Yeah, and I don't know if they can get their follow up to it in shorter order. I think they can still have the potential to blow people away with it.
Yeah. No News writes in and says, since the Strix Halo cannot fit on AM5, could it be used for a Threadripper product? I feel like we get this question every few months. Does the Strix Halo IO die support the wide connection to the CPU die? Does it support enough PCIe lanes? A 16-core Zen 5 or even 32-core Zen 5C product with 4 lanes of memory could fit nicely between Epic and top-end AM5. Well, yeah, I wonder if you could adapt the memory controller, but I don't think the I/O is really there. Like my memory, I don't have it up handy here, but is that I think someone else may have leaked that too. Is like the amount of PCIe lanes it has. No, this is meant to be on its own, and meaning it really wouldn't have enough for like a Threadripper style, SSD support. You'd
It's
have
not
to.
it's not an IO king.
No, it'll probably be able a ton of I/O for a laptop, adding
yeah.
enough SSD, but it's not competing with Threadripper, and so they have to have some way. I would suspect of like piggybacking a Epic I/O die next to it on Threadripper, and I just don't see that happening. I mean, the Epic socket is big enough. I'm sure you could fit it in there, but I mean, no, I don't think so. This is meant for high-end premium laptop. That's what this is meant to do. I have heard that at least Medusa Halo, which is the follow-up to Strix Halo, might have some way of fitting on AM5. Maybe someone told me they may have made it just small enough. And, now that we know that the IO die is 3 nanometer, initially I kind of assumed 4. Like maybe they can make it just small enough that one chiplet and one IO and the IO die can fit on AM5. But even then, it's hard for me to see how that product makes that much sense, because if it's on AM5, it would need to be 128-bit. Sure, I've leaked that there's Halo low power that is supposed to be 20 to 28 compute units, 128-bit, kind of just cutting it in half. But how many of these yields are actually going to go there? And if the IO die is 3 nanometer, yeah, maybe it makes it easier to fit in an AM5 package. It also makes it like a lot more expensive, though. Like, so what are they going to sell this for? Like something that, let's be honest. I mean, look, it's 128-bit, even with, what's the best case scenario? Even though it's 3.5, 7600 performance. Okay, well, those are selling for like 250. So 250 plus what would be, I assume they give it, just one CCD on AM5, like a $300 CPU. So are they going to sell a $600 APU that's as strong as a 7600 on? They can put that in a laptop that costs $2,000. I don't see it. They could maybe, but it would have to be the worst of the worst of the worst yields just to get rid of them.
Yeah, I feel like that's what always happens, is they usually release the G desktop CPUs, and that's usually because they have to get rid of extra stock of it, because when you try to slot it into their lineup, it usually doesn't quite work anywhere.
No.
So I don't know why you would want to sell that as its own rather than a big ass laptop.
Yeah, and it's like
an expensive laptop.
Like with Strix, I actually show this here. I have a Strix mini PC here that I plan to test this week, so I can't wait to see how that goes at higher TDPs. If it like really delivers like 3050 like performance. I thought maybe Strix could be interesting in the lineup because it has 12 cores. Even if they're weaker, maybe you could position it below the other 12 core, just above the 8 core, and then it comes with a 3050 graphics equivalent. So you could be like, so the real 12 core is 500. Maybe this is like 450, but the 12 core is weaker and it comes with graphics. So, but even then, it's like, but what's max boost? Still 10% lower than a 9700X. All cores probably actually going to be only slightly better, if not the same, while using less energy. And it's the die size of this thing. It's like 232 millimeters squared. The 9900X is 270 millimeters plus like a 120. I don't know if it even costs less to make than a 9900X, so why would they sell it? Yeah, so it's hard. It's going to come to AM5 Strixwell, but it is, even that, the one I thought might be easier because it has 12 cores, it's hard to segment. So think about how hard it would be to segment Strix Halo. All right. AI Fish AI Wrangler writes in again, says, regarding Medusa, a CES 2026 launch would make sense to me. However, I have a couple of questions fundamental to the super APU approach. Is Medusa still going to use the FP11 socket? Also, unless, because I think it's like FP11 is Halo, and then I think there's like an FP9 or FP8 these for Strix. Also, unless NVIDIA keeps being lazy with their 70 class performance, wouldn't they need to scale GPU bandwidth faster than LPDDR5X RAM speeds increase to keep pace? Well, I think what I saw with Medusa is they're like looking at like 10,000 or faster memory speed. So right there's that. I've also heard some crazy things about the memory bus that might go bigger again. Not sure about the socket. I just don't remember off the top of my head. It probably uses the same one, actually. And it shouldn't be an issue because they integrate the memory. So whatever. That's not an issue for laptop makers if they go to a higher bus width. But I don't have corroborated proof on the bus width, so I'm not going to say what I've heard. But what I will say, AI Fish, AI Wrangler, is AMD is aware for the APU to be stronger, it will need more bandwidth. And they will find a way to do it, whether that's faster, more cache, or an insane 384-bit bus. You know, HBM's not coming to us, Dan.
I'm kidding.
I know you're making fun of every few episodes. Someone's like, "Where's HBM?" And it's like, not for us peasants anymore. But so they have ways of scaling this, and I've heard crazy things. And they know it needs more bandwidth. They'll find a way to give it more bandwidth. All right. And speaking of a product that will be stronger, but probably not have more bandwidth than the current generation, let us move on to story number 4. RDNA 4 and FSR 4 basically are confirmed to launch in early 2024. First quoting from AMD's Q3 2024 earnings call. In gaming graphics, revenue declined year over year as we prepare for a transition to our next-gen Radeon GPUs based on our RDNA 4 architecture. In addition to a strong increase in gaming performance, RDNA 4 delivers significantly higher ray tracing performance, so there that is confirmed, and adds new AI capabilities. Additionally, AMD revealed that FSR 4 is coming to Black Ops 6. This is a machine learning-based FSR that has been revealed earlier and promises to allow AMD to yet again, hopefully, catch up a little bit with DLSS and hopefully keep up or outpace NVIDIA eventually, now that they're not just relying on a software implementation. Black Ops 6 will have a full Season 1 launch on November 14th, and since COD seems to last 2 months, that kind of gives you the indication that FSR might launch with RDNA 4 in January or between January and March of 2025. And so there you go. This confirms this channel's leaks about RDNA 4, a mid-tier gen, but one which may put AMD at parity for both upscaling and ray tracing with NVIDIA for the first time ever, actually. That would be, or at least close, if not parity. So what did you think of this, Dan?
I mean, it's more just confirmation of what we've already heard, but I'm very curious to see what an machine learning based FSR actually looks like compared to current FSR. I mean, if machine learning is all it's cracked up to be, that should hopefully mean that FSR is finally at parity with DLSS. And crossing my fingers, AMD gets there, because that's really where AMD is lacking. We've said that a million times. I really don't care that this gen isn't going to be much of an uplift in raster performance. You really don't need something stronger than what we have currently.
Yeah, like 7900 XTs or XTXs, something like that. It's really, I just looked at recent benchmarks of Black Ops, and it's like the 4090 is there, 100 frames in 4K with absurd settings. But, then there's the XTX is above 4080 Super by like 20%. Actually, very bad showing for the 4080 GPUs in Black Ops 6. If only, though, you can just say with NVIDIA, well, we'll turn on DLSS, will be like 4K 120 or higher, depending on what version you're using. It'll look as good as native. And then you take AMD, and it's like, yeah, FSR will be close to looking like native in 4K, but wouldn't it be nice if it just was there, and then everything else was also at parity?
Yeah, because, I've sung the praises of FSR in the past. I will also say, depending on the implementation, once you start getting into like balanced or FSR performance, sometimes the graphics do start looking a little janky in some games.
Yeah.
Now, the best implementations like, I can't even remember the last, like Modern Warfare 2, right? Yeah, that's the last one I played. I thought they did FSR really well in that game.
Oh, yeah, I thought it looked great. I tried your graphics card in it.
Yeah, I had that on when I was playing that game. I always had it on when I was playing that game. It still is behind what the best I've seen of DLSS. So I'm excited to see that they actually might launch FSR 4 and it not be a flash drive, not a PowerPoint thing where it's like an FSR coming at some unspecified date, because this definitely isn't a thing we quickly threw into our slide deck to respond to something NVIDIA said.
Yeah. Which, Blackwell is going to be announced in a couple months. It'll be interesting to see what they announce for DLSS 4. Like, hopefully AMD is pushing hard enough here. I mean, I saw rumors out there too that they might have something like with, I forgot what it's called, but like NVIDIA's DLSS 3.5 and later does better things with like ray tracing intersection, so that like it actually kind of looks better if done properly. Of course, initial reviews are mixed at Hardware Unboxed and stuff, but the ray tracing is actually like more accurate with DLSS on. It just like that. There's rumors they're working on that too with FSR 4, so it's exciting. I don't know. We'll have to see what Nvidia does next. I've heard what they're going to try to do with DLSS 4 is just make it so that they're not going for higher frame rates this time. It's just the quality cannot be touched, especially with ray tracing. But at least right now, what we can say is I've seen reviews of PSSR, or early reviews. I guess they're not full, but early ones.
Yeah.
And the scuttlebutt seems to be that it firmly beats FSR 3.1, or I don't even know if 3.2 is that. Like it beats FSR 3.1 firmly. Like it's not close, but DLSS slightly edges it out. So this is something Sony is doing for the first time. And again, I'm told PSSR was made by Sony, not by AMD. And then they sent PSSR to AMD to help them as a package after they finished it. And that Sony's continuing to do it on their own. Yeah, they talk with AMD, but if Sony could do that, I think there's hope that FSR 4 can at least catch up with where DLSS is now, which is like 3.7 or something.
Yeah. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I hope it's sooner rather than later, but January or March, I mean, I doubt I'm getting it. So I don't know. Hopefully it will add some nice news to talk about to the early 2025 news cycle, though.
Well, all these things,
I wish we had more good news more of the time.
Well, I mean, this was expected to be the most insane year ever. And to be fair, we got Zen 5 and Arrow Lake both disappointed, one a lot more than the other. And then we got Lunar Lake and Strix. Both of those were at least cool. New versions of DLSS and FSR came out. There's a PS5 Pro. It's a pretty big year, but because it's not going to be the most insane of all time, that means 2025 is going to have Blackwell, RDNA 4, maybe Zen 6, Panther Lake, Switch 2. So, I mean,
yeah, and
I'd rather we have years where there's a big story a month and not one where there's 10 big stories in 1 month and we have nothing to talk about in 2021, because that sucked.
Yeah, and I do think next year is going to be very interesting. Like, what are people more interested in? Something 50% stronger than a 4090 for $2,200 or whatever it's going to be, or $600 for the same thing we have right now, or $500 for what we have performance we have right now with better ray tracing.
For Blackwell?
No, like with RDNA 4 versus Blackwell, it's what are people going to be more interested in?
Yeah, I think a lot of that's going to come down to how much does Nvidia care. Like, I'm not hearing great things about the price performance, guys. I've already leaked some things. So, but let's move on here. So shrugging, this wouldn't be shrugging emoji, right? This would be shrugging guy.
Yeah, I forgot what you.
This guy.
I forgot what
out
you
of characters.
Yeah.
Well, shrugging dude says, "Hi Tom. I noticed that AMD recently lost a lot of GPU market share to Nvidia, and I was wondering if it even makes sense for AMD to make discrete gaming GPUs anymore if people are not buying them." It does. They are making great APUs, which will make low-end GPUs obsolete. So they are chipping away at the mid-range market they were going to pull back to. No, I mean, Strix Halo isn't going to be remotely. It's not going to be as strong as RDNA 4, guys.
Strix Halo will be what? It's going to be low mid-tier performance, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, like 4060 Ti.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if like let me actually look here. 4060 Ti. And then I go to, I don't know, 7900 XTX. I mean, you're looking at double. I mean, even if it's a little weaker than the XTX, that's double the performance. So they're still not remotely in the same tier, RDNA 4 and Strix Halo. Like he says, if it's going to have about the same performance as a 4070, right? A laptop 4070, which is a 4060 Ti, which will be a 5060 next year. It could potentially make sense to focus the R&D efforts on APUs, since the consoles also run on APUs. They're doing great performance-wise. Do you have a take on this? Yeah, they are, but I don't know if you've noticed, the PS5 Pro pretty much takes the 8800 XT IP block and throws it in an APU. So the R&D they're doing to make dedicated GPUs is being leveraged. I mean, it is being leveraged to be used in their APUs as well. And RDNA 4 is much better at AI. They will sell these as AI chips. They're going to merge RDNA and CDNA to UDNA in a couple gens. And then that will mean making great GPUs is the same thing sold everywhere, just like it is right now with the A6000 for NVIDIA. So, no, AMD, I don't think their market share is as bad as people is. I do think they lost some market share this year, though, actually. but it's not enough where they're going to stop making GPUs remotely at all. And don't forget that if you look at AMD's earnings right now, you can see like a lot of this is coming from Xbox. So PlayStation sales slightly slowing, and Xbox sales are gone. They're gone. And so that was a decent portion of AMD's revenue. And you know, they keep saying semi-custom is a major thing. Is it a lot of it GPU? Yes. Anyone, don't yell at me in the comments. Oh, so you're saying no. I'm not saying GPU sales aren't down. I've reported outspokenly GPU sales are down a lot. But it's a double whammy for them right now because those are down. They can't sell them as easily in AI as Nvidia, and they will in the future. So that's why they're going to keep making them. But then also it looks extra bad because of Xbox collapsing. So,
yeah, I mean, the only way this would, I think they could even humor this is if somehow their discrete endeavors start completely stagnate while their APUs like double in performance gen over gen every time for like 2 gens, which I don't think would happen. And I think if you're using more silicon dedicated to just the discrete graphics card, you're always going to have something more powerful than what you get in an APU.
Yeah. And again, a thing that people worked at Intel back when they weren't collapsing, but when they were starting to work on Arc before we knew Arc would be terrible, a big thing they said was like, they made Ivy Bridge fantastic, caught up to AMD and APU performance, I believe. And then AMD kind of took the lead again in some respects, but then Broadwell just crushed it. Skylake then stagnated, though. And that's because they went, I believe, I don't remember what it was, from like HG3000 Intel at Sandy Lake, but I don't know. I think they went from like 16 to like 20, and then Broadwell went to like 40 execution units. And then they tried to go to 72 with Skylake, and it was like 10% better. So it's like clearly after Broadwell, and they said, we need to make dedicated graphics so that we have to make powerful things so that we can scale it across the stack. Because if we just keep making these little things, we're going to hit these performance walls we didn't know we would run into. For that reason alone, it makes sense for AMD to make mid-range GPUs, which again, yeah, look, Strix Halo is going to be awesome. But you're talking about something like 3, 4, 5 classes lower than even the mid-range GPU they're going to launch. And so they are still going through scaling walls, and it is strong enough they can give it 32 gigs of RAM and sell it as an AI card for half the price of NVIDIA. It makes sense for them to keep making dedicated GPUs. All righty. Well, speaking of making new products, let's move on to story number 5 here with NVIDIA allegedly preparing consumer CPUs. Rumors of NVIDIA's entry into the PC market have gotten new wind with a comprehensive leak from DigiTimes. They allege that NVIDIA is both making their own chips and providing their IP, likely graphics, for a MediaTek PC chip. Qualcomm seems doomed to lose its exclusivity offerings for Windows on ARM soon, and partnering with MediaTek is nothing new for NVIDIA, as the two companies partnered together for an auto AI silicon last year already. And MediaTek is easy to predict. They will use ARM Cortex or Neoverse cores. They have been tried before. They don't seem to offer enough single threading for Windows and x86 emulation. This is why Qualcomm needed custom cores. But what will NVIDIA bring? Well, NVIDIA can make custom cores. They've done so before, and they have all the money in the world currently. So still, launching in 2026 doesn't give them much time. We should probably expect their first generation, this is according to Carbon Cry's editorialization. Maybe the first gen of NVIDIA won't be that strong in the core department, but at a minimum, they have the money to, within a few years, probably take a stab at something that might take out Qualcomm in this space, and they will have a much, much better GPU included. So, you know, like you could see NVIDIA launch an ARM chip, and I think, and yeah, you know, maybe like let's just say hypothetically it's 2026, NVIDIA launches an ARM APU, and the CPU is as fast as Strix. And you're like, well, that's 2 years old. And then they go, yes, but it comes with integrated like 60-70 performance and a really good AI. And actually, our compatibility on Windows on ARM is better because we know how to program better. And you could see this being the first step where they're like, yeah, look, AMD has a stronger CPU. Our GPU is way better and we're more efficient. You can use it for all these other things. And the next generation will be the grounds up NVIDIA design. So this is, I think, deserved its own story for a reason. Like, this is huge. As Intel's falling apart, and we'll talk about that more with upcoming stories, NVIDIA really does seem poised to at least enter the laptop market.
Oh, yeah. I mean, where Qualcomm, like, seriously faltered when it came to the release of the Snapdragon. I just don't see Nvidia where they're in the position they're currently at releasing a disappointing performance product. Like, I don't know if they'll have all of their issues with emulation solved by then, but I don't know. It's Nvidia. I feel like it's probably going to. And yeah, I don't know. I hope somebody is there to take Intel's place when it comes to CPUs. Not sure if I want it to be Nvidia because Nvidia has enough power as it is, but I don't know. I have a feeling it's going to be a good launch.
I just think it's going to become more of a multipolar world in CPU over the next few years. Like, you're going to see AMD kind of be seen as the new Intel, but they don't have 80% of the market like Intel used to. So they'll probably be there with like a third to half of the market. And you'll just see Intel shrink from half to 40 to 30%. And you'll have this pie over here from Nvidia, a pie over here from Qualcomm, pie over here maybe from MediaTek or someone else. I don't know. And that's what I think is going to happen. AMD will be seen as the new Intel. They're not the new Intel, really, though. And Nvidia is going to be there slowly trying to become, at least on the laptop, a serious contender.
But AMD will be the old guard option.
Yeah, that's seen as the big established x86 CPU brand, maybe in a way that Intel used to be. But they won't really be as powerful, and there will be more little players. You're calling Nvidia little, and they're really little. But
well, they're little in this space, I guess. But sure. Yeah, not really.
It's kind of like when people like Xbox is an underdog. I'm like, well, Microsoft's pretty big, guys. I don't know.
Still, I don't remember where Nvidia ranks right now, but one of the most valuable companies in the world.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know how much there is to discuss about this. I think Carmack kind of nailed it too, with like the little details of like, expect the first generation to be like probably better compatibility than what Qualcomm did, but not really do anything more. Maybe not even be quite as impressive performance wise for the year. I'll probably be stronger than whatever the X Elite is now, but for the year, it won't be as strong as you'd think it would be with something that has an Nvidia sticker. But they're just going to go, yeah, but our integrated graphics, our efficiency.
Well, yeah,
but this is a good option. And also the CPU is strong enough, guys. I mean,
if they make a okay gaming CPU with like a killer iGPU, yeah, that'll sell well on laptops.
This piece of content is brought to you by the Minis Forum Elite Mini UM760 Slim. The 760 Slim has efficient and quiet cooling, a competent 6-core 7640Hz processor included, and support for dual NVMEs and dual channel memory, and both are user upgradable, by the way. And of course, it also has plenty of connectivity and output capabilities, and well, you know what the best part is? It's really aggressively priced, despite not cheaping out on the storage, but even comes with a full 1TB SSD included. So if you want to support Moore's Law is Dead, follow the links and directions below to get the biggest discount on this product. And know that following that link and those directions is a way to directly support the channel. So support Moore's Law is Dead by checking out the Minis Forum Elite Mini UM760 Slim today. All right, well, I guess let us then move on to story number 6. Pat allegedly ruined a deal with TSMC. So, quote in here from Reuters, instead of nurturing the relationship that they had with TSMC, Gelsinger, who hopes to restore Intel's own manufacturing prowess, apparently offended TSMC by calling out Taiwan's precarious relations with China. He said, "You don't want all of your eggs in the basket of a Taiwan fab." He said that on May 2021, using industry jargon for a chip fabrication plant. That December, encouraging U.S. investment in U.S. chip making, he said at a tech conference, "Taiwan is not a stable place. Opens new tab." In public, TSMC downplayed this opens new tab comment with its founder calling Gelsinger a bit rude, but opens new tab privately. TSMC said it would no longer honor the discount. Sources of Reuters said that they had a deal for 40% off $23,000 3-nanometer wafers on which TSMC would print Intel chips for. This is Arrow Lake. Intel had to pay the full price after these public comments, shrinking its profit margin on the deal. Arrow Lake really, really does cost more now than it's on TSMC 3-nanometer for them.
I mean, yeah, with an already expensive package. That's really not good. I don't know what else to say to this other than we've been talking about Pat Gelsinger needing to be replaced. I think this is just another piece of evidence for that.
Mhm.
They're not doing well. I don't know what else to say.
It's just crazy. Like, so Reuters has sources. I trust when they say they have these people, they do. They say the wafers are $23,000. They were going to get a 40% haircut. And that was probably key to Intel making this deal with TSMC. And now they're being forced to launch this competitive product that we know probably costs 50% more to make than Zen 4. It's just.
I mean, yeah, I'm curious what the profit margin on these things is at this point.
Let's see in their Q4 earnings next year.
Oh, yeah, that is coming up in 2 months, I guess.
Yeah. So Quick Jumper writes him, I realized after Intel's earnings recently that their debt is actually a huge problem. It's years and years of insufficient spending, and even now, their cash flow, if their cash flow improves, they still have around $50 billion of debt. From the financial side, AMD may soon be able to be 3/3 of the revenue, or was it 3/3 of the revenue of Intel? So that'd be the whole thing. I mean, it might mean 2/3 of the revenue of Intel, or maybe a third. Additionally, if Nvidia releases CPUs in 2025 or 2026, will Intel get to the state AMD was before Zen soon? I don't know. I think that they need a merger or something. Or I don't see how it happens.
When AMD was in that state, they had 10,000 employees or something?
I think a little less. Yeah. And now Intel, even after cutting 15% of the people Pat hired when he shouldn't have, when he took over, they're still like at 100,000. I mean, look, let's be honest. This company probably needs to be, if you look at revenue, a 60 to 80,000 person company. And with a lot of that just being to make the fabs run. I don't like, they're falling apart. They screwed up this deal with TSMC. They have all this debt. And then they have Nova Lake is the first thing we're hearing of that sounds like it might, but we've heard this before with Intel, might leapfrog AMD, but that's going to happen at the same time that Nvidia will be entering the market. So good luck, with that competition at the same time. It's just, leads me to believe that maybe somebody should buy them. So let us move on to story number 7. Intel and Samsung are reportedly inking a foundry alliance, while rumors of Apple or Samsung buying Intel or merging with them or something also come out. First, quoting from TrendForce. According to a report by the Mail business newspaper, U.S. semiconductor giant Intel has reached out to Samsung Electronics to explore the possibility of forming a foundry alliance. Citing sources in the semiconductor industry, the report reveals that a senior Intel executive recently requested a high-level meeting between the two companies. Intel CEO Pat Gelsinger is reportedly seeking a direct meeting with Samsung Electronics chairman Lee Jae-yong to discuss comprehensive cooperation plans for their foundry divisions. Meanwhile, this channel leaked a couple weeks ago that Intel seems to be getting closer and closer to the other alien semiconductor IDM giant, Samsung. They are both very weak right now. Well, Samsung has many other revenue streams. Its foundry business seems to be failing. For years, we have heard stories about yield issues, unrealistic promises, nodes that get fixed years after the industry has already moved on to the new node. And then meanwhile, Intel, we've talked about plenty there too. Samsung has even shut down several fabs recently. This was huge news that came out this week as well. Shutting down semiconductor fabrication equipment is very costly, and it is even more expensive to turn it back on. But they had to because no one's using their fabs, Dan. So think about it. Samsung doing this means they not only have low demand, but expect low demand to continue, or they would have still kept it on. In these turbulent times, perhaps the two companies see each other as solutions to their respective problems. Intel has nodes, but doesn't have capital and foundry know-how. That is to say, customer relations. They may have good nodes, but no one trusts Intel. Maybe they would trust Samsung to use Intel nodes. Samsung has a proven foundry and capital, but doesn't have good nodes. It would honestly make a lot of sense for some sort of merger, or at least partial buyout to happen. Oh, and a story broke recently too about people in Washington worrying that Intel won't survive, that they would be wasting money if they give them more CHIPS Act funding, and that they think either a bigger funding act for Intel needs to happen, or there's people behind the scenes in Washington, according to an article in the description that I'll link to, alleging they may push for a company to merge with them to save the company. So this, I know this sounds crazy, but Karen Osagata reached out to me and said, Tom, you should try to get a financial person on again soon. And I think I should. Maybe Daniel Nenny would do Because I think all too often I see people in the comments, this won't happen. Like Apple can't buy Intel, Samsung can't merge with Intel, this can't allow, that can't do that, they can't do this can't. Yeah, guys, they might fucking fail. They might fucking fail. They might go out of business. They might go bankrupt. They just laid off 15,000 employees. They might fail. Something needs to change. The numbers are not go up. They go down. Number go down for a long time. If number go down, company die unless it go up again. Like, and I know it's crazy that it's Intel, but I feel like I have to talk like I'm talking to children because, guys, the numbers suggest they don't have the money. Where's it going to come from? Don't just tell me I'm being crazy. You tell me where it will come from then, because it ain't fucking coming from Arrow Lake. Where's it going to come from?
Yeah, I mean, so what? This is just them kind of dipping their toes in the water at, I would assume it would be a merger, not an acquisition, although.
With Samsung, I think some sort of partial buyout of their foundries could make sense. But a total merger would make some sense. And I said this in the video I put out about this too. Like, just thinking about it, like, if Qualcomm approached Intel, which it seems like they did, Samsung might be worried Qualcomm will merge with Intel, and then we'll have all of the smartphone manufacturing and infusion of capital, hopefully new leadership. And then that could get you into a situation where Qualcomm Intel becomes the new Samsung. I mean, they'll compete in all of the same markets and have all of their own foundries, and their foundries would be better than Samsung. You know, so Samsung might want to buy Intel or do something or merge with them so that Qualcomm doesn't become their worst enemy. Same kind of goes for Apple, who might be worried Qualcomm will buy Intel, have the manufacturing in the United States, by the way, which is important not just for eggs in one basket, Pat, but because if tariffs were to happen, guess where Intel has foundries? United States. So that would make sense for Apple to do that. Apple's an American company too. So I don't know. I kind of cut you off there, but it's like, no, there are very real reasons these companies might do it. And there are rumors that people in Washington might want this to happen because they know Intel's falling apart here.
Well, Washington really wants Intel to succeed, and for understandable reasons.
They mentioned pushing AMD to merge with them too, by the way, in that article, but I don't know.
All of semiconductor manufacturing, or all, I shouldn't say all, but all of the most advanced happening in Taiwan it's tenuous for in any situation, even if there wasn't the who knows what's going to happen in Taiwan over the next 3 years.
With China, because you don't need China to blow up Taiwan for there to be an earthquake. Anything could happen there. It's all in one place. That is all your eggs in one basket, a little bit, actually.
Yeah, and if Intel is, their fabs generally are almost at least as far as advanced, as far as the tech goes, at the same level as or close to TSMC. Having someone in there come in there to bolster them as at least a fab business makes sense, and maybe Intel should just become a fab business. Those work. I don't know what the rest of the company's doing.
Yeah, and again, Dick.
And actually, as far as headcount goes, I don't even know what's bigger. I would guess their fabs are bigger at this point, but
and headcount at Intel. Yeah, I believe that's most of them. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, them axing the design side of their business and just becoming a fab might be what they need to save them.
Alu Viti writes in and says, Apple buying Intel makes no sense in any way, in my opinion. The M4 in an iPad passively cooled beats a 14900 KS and single core performance by 15% and some benchmarks. I don't see what expertise Intel would bring to Apple when Beast Lake would have been their first true new micro architecture in 20 years, but now they got nothing to show for. Well, supposedly a lot of the IP they developed for Beast Lake is still there waiting to be used. So I wouldn't entirely say that. But he goes on, TSMC is also building plants outside of Taiwan, so it's a much safer bet for Apple to plan with that instead of wasting $100 billion on acquiring fabs that may or may not work. Well, they do work. Intel's fabs do work, number one. Number two, I think there's some weird assumption in this argument you're making that the fabs are perfect and great. Now, we'll have a story in the wrap-up. TSMC 4nm Arizona yields are beating the Taiwanese sister plant. Good. But think of how many of the fabs TSMC has in Taiwan compared to in the US. And it's going to be a decade before they have as many fabs, hypothetically even, with enough people working at them. Like, just because they have one fab in Arizona doing well doesn't mean they have dozens of fabs in the US with dozens of product managers. And
and that fab isn't it like a quarter of the capacity of the ones in Taiwan or something?
I don't know, but it might be. Yeah, at the top of my head. But so this is where I think you're wrong here, Aluvite. You're like, wouldn't it be safer? I don't know if you have 20 years to kill, but you don't have 20 years to kill. If you buy Intel, it's here now. You know what's here now with? American employees that won't have the cultural differences that are ready to make stuff. Whereas with TSMC, you got to hire people, got to poach as many people, frankly, from Intel as you can. You got to fly people in from Taiwan to set up the fab. You buy Intel, it's done. And it's Apple, who's worked with Intel in the past before, has the money to buy them, is an American company. You can see how the U.S. government might go, yeah, I don't know, it might be great if Apple buys Intel and gets their shit together.
Yeah, I mean, if Intel truly, well, I shouldn't say if, they are. If, like, Intel is in free fall. Any company that does chip design and a ton of manufacturing, I would suspect could be a possible buyer or merger. I would assume with Apple that would just be an outright purchase, but given how much
and this person also
bigger
says
their market
like,
cap is.
their M4 chips magic, it solves cancer and has a chip pack on it. But so why do they need Intel engineers? Yeah, guys, I mean, it's not like just one genius designing these chips. You need large teams of people to help scale up new architectures. I keep hearing that Apple wants to get into the server market, mostly for themselves at first, but they have this obvious, they want to keep doing more, just very slowly, and they're not going to be stupid and try to take the whole GPU market like Intel did. They're just going to be like, we made one server chip. Also, let's be honest, we can just use it for the workstations we're selling. So, having more Intel engineers join, maybe at a lot of entry-level positions, to be honest there, but they could take all of them in, and that would just help them scale and solve problems faster because you have more people. Not to mention, I'm sorry, Apple's silicon is impressive, but the last two generations, I've read in reviews, people are disappointed by the gains. That it almost feels like they've tapped out, and bringing in some of that beast like IP, which is still IP that sits there, bringing in some of those chip engineers and stuff, and going, how can we scale up our architecture in a new way? That makes some sense to me. Now, again, I want to be clear about this too. I said this was a rumor because I don't have proof. Obviously, I couldn't know for sure if this was going to happen, even if people told me they were sure that would be in the know. It's still just rumors, but it's so weird. I put out this leak of Samsung talking to Intel very seriously, Apple allegedly, according to a source of mine, making a pass at Intel. We have rumors of Qualcomm. Now, all this stuff comes out about this Foundry alliance, Samsung fabs shutting down. I don't know. The evidence out there seems to support something really is going on. And again, when you say they can't do this, they won't allow that to do that. The U.S. government behind the scenes is apparently saying and I've heard this for some of my own sources. I talked to some people in the defense industry who work with computers, and they're like, no, behind the scenes, they're scared to give Intel any CHIPS Act funding because it doesn't seem to be panning out, and they need to do something about it. So if you hear the U.S. government going over and over, they need to do something about it. They need to do something about it. This might be the thing they do about it. They're not just going to give Intel $100 billion for Pat to shove it up his ass and make graphics cards again. They're going to want a real solution that actually solves the problem, because right now I think they're looking at Intel going, money isn't the only thing they need. And then the antitrust. No, this is where they say for national security, we're going to allow the merger to happen.
Yeah, I mean, this might be the rare time where a merger has to happen, or it might be advantageous if a merger happens.
The Samsung Intel one does make a lot of sense to me. The question is, Samsung's South Korean. Yes, there's nothing more American than people from South Korea, let's be honest. But at the same time, it's like, God, they just freaked out about Japan, but buying Nippon Steel, and everyone who's involved says that they should allow the merger because it would save, what is it, American Steel or Pennsylvania Steel, whatever it is. And so I would worry about that happening with this, to be honest. But I don't know.
Yeah, a big multinational or binational, I don't know, merger between a South Korean and an American company sounds complicated to me, and I don't know, what would they just run two headquarters or something? I guess that's probably what would end up
I work for a company like that.
No, I suppose that's true.
Headquarters in Europe and in America. I would think what it would be is some weird partial merger thing. Like, we're taking our fabs and we're merging Intel into Samsung fabs with the partnership that we get to use this much capacity at this price. Like, that's almost what AMD did with global foundries before
Global
they fully
Foundry.
spin them off. They're like, oh, it's kind of part of AMD. Now it's not really, not really. Maybe Intel would start doing that to split itself apart and get an injection in funding. And again, help Samsung get their stuff together because this just looks really bad over there right now. Carbon Cry writes in, with ARM revoking Qualcomm's architectural license and with ISA not mattering, is Qualcomm looking to buy Intel just to rework Orion cores into x86? Could this be the triumphant return of x86 into smartphones? Yeah, I know about that one, but I don't know. It'd be interesting if like Samsung and Intel merge and it's like Samsung Ultra 7 or like, I don't know, like Samsung branded x86. I don't know. That's the thing that I do find weird with both of these, though. Is look, the only other big x86 company is AMD. So if they were to buy Intel, we all know what's going to happen. Like they're just going to make more of the same stuff. But with like Apple or Qualcomm or Samsung merging with Intel or anything, it's like, well, what? I assume they just take the money, keep developing x86 server chips, but then there will have to be a decision. Do we pivot to all ARM for consumers, make both to compete with ourselves? That would be weird.
Or the mind-blowing situation, Tom. What if Apple buys Intel, they get the x86 license, and then they start selling Apple PC CPUs? Mind blown.
Like just Apple 7s?
Yep.
I don't know. I kind of doubt that, honestly.
I doubt it too.
That would be a steal, like a Gilded Age, they don't even know what else to do anymore thing 20 years from now, where Apple's like, yeah, fuck it. We took all these markets, so we're just going to start making i7s, I guess, and compete with ourselves. I don't think so, though. All right. Well, moving on then to the final wrap up. We have quite a few things here. Honestly, this could have been a 10-story episode, but we decided to make a lot of these wrap ups instead of spending a dedicated 10 or 20 minutes on it. So the first one here is PS5 Pro apparently is 2 gigabytes of DDR5. Now, this was something that was weird because I talked to a developer who, of course, has PlayStation 5 Pro dev kits, was working on them, and just saw in the notes, we've made it possible to free up more RAM in, and it's like, okay, they didn't know how.
Yeah.
They're like, I don't know how they're compressing it. I guess Sony had an extra 2 gigabytes of RAM on the PS5 Pro and didn't tell devs because they didn't need to know.
I guess that makes sense.
That's what it sounds like to me.
It really falls into Sony's long history of putting hardware in in the PlayStation and not telling anybody that it's in there for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I'm remembering correctly, that was also in the PS4, right? There was the little...
Yes. I don't remember exactly how much it was, but I want to say the base PS4 had like half a gigabyte of DDR3 or DDR2 and its own ARM CPU, and that would, I think, handle like capturing.
Yeah.
Over time, they wanted to free up more RAM to developers, so they like slowly made that kind of handle most of the OS, which is why the PS4 got so god dang slow by the end of the generation. But the PS4 Pro had a stronger ARM CPU and a full gigabyte or so of RAM, so it's really like a 9 gigabyte console. Why the PS4 Pro actually is still pretty snappy. And I was surprised they didn't do that with the PS5 because I was like, I thought that was a really cool solution to save money. Like, don't do this silly segmented RAM thing Microsoft's doing. No, what you want to do is just have another piece of RAM that's never used for anything gaming, saves you some money.
Mm-hmm.
This makes a lot of sense to me, and I now have absolutely no worries about it having enough RAM. I mean, right now, I've said this before, but now it's doubly true. The PS5 Pro is there to double frame rates and turn up ray tracing at the same time. That is what it's trying, and a few other things, but that's what it's trying to do. It is not trying to go from 4K to 8K, although apparently there will be some 8K games. I'll be interested to see how those run. But if you think about all of that, then, all right, so if the PS5 in any game that's dynamic resolution, even for a split second, like maybe it's jumping between 1440p and 4K, and only 1 second out of an hour does it actually dynamically hit 4K, that still means it had enough RAM to hit 4K. Right.
Yeah.
And so the PS5 Pro will just always be closer to 4K or at 4K. And if you add 2 gigabytes of RAM, there's your buffer for the ray tracing, the extra ray tracing, slightly higher textures, probably. That's all you need, And so I think this thing is pretty well optimized then for what it's trying to achieve now that I know it does actually have more RAM.
Yeah. I see what you're saying.
Also, what is this here? Where's the article? Like, Microsoft basically just confirmed that they are going third party. I mean, Satya Nadella just openly said, let me see here, we are focused on growing the platform, expanding new ecosystems. Like when asked like which games are coming to PlayStation, like I think they confirmed Indiana Jones's, and then they basically said, hey, look, all future games are on PlayStation.
I think it's interesting that that's coming from Satya Nadella, not Phil Spencer.
Phil Spencer is in the doggy cage now. He's no longer in charge, I don't think.
Yeah.
Qualcomm says E-cores are obsolete. It's just a lot of news, honestly, here. Because I think they're new. Let me pull up the art.
So is their next generation not?
Their Snapdragon 8 Elite doesn't have E-cores. And they said, to be their opinion, they said, to be clear, we thought E-cores made sense. And we are glad we did them. We did them for a reason. And we'll see. Maybe Carbon Cry or someone will correct me in the comments. My interpretation of this is, if you think about it, if it took, what do we have? Sandy Bridge and then Ivy Bridge, I think 11 months later. Like we used to have CPU cores designed on a yearly cadence or faster. And if you can do that, well, make two teams, make two types of cores, boom, shoot it out. You can probably afford to do that. But if it's taking now 2 years and multitudes more money to optimize these hyper efficient optimized cores compared to what we were doing before, you have to wonder of like, well, all of that money, you might as well just make one core type and just make it a little more modular. And that's my interpretation of what Qualcomm is saying here is like, well, we've optimized one of the cores so much, the E-cores are kind of a waste of time. And to be honest, there's a lot of people who say that about Arrow Lake. They're like, so what, Lion Cove is like 10% faster? I mean, what's going on here? Like, couldn't you just do 48 E-cores and try to clock them faster or something? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're trying to save money like Intel needs to, yeah, probably should get away from them.
They are just apparently not for 3 years. Panther Lake, I just titled this, is really just shaping up to be a full generation. It's no longer going to do the special memory type that I think Strix Halo does and Lunar Lake does. They're going to be able to use normal DDR slot DIMMs. And when I look at this, I just remember Panther Lake was initially told to me it was going to be like, I think 4 + 8 and a Lunar Lake successor. Mm-hmm. And then I heard there could be a desktop variant, that they're canceling the Airlock variant, that now it's going to use normal memory. It's just becoming a normal full product family because Air Lake failed. That's my interpretation.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. I mean, Intel needs to get out whatever it can get out as soon as it can. So I don't know. Hopefully Air Lake Desktop comes out first half of next year. Mm-hmm. And Air Lake needs to be a barely there generation.
I already mentioned TSMC 4nm Arizona yields beat Taiwanese, so they're getting there. They just don't have it. It takes time to actually get the capacity here. Intel moving Nova Lake back to their nodes. I don't remember when I last leaked about Arrow Lake. No, I think I did leak that. So yeah, I mean, that seems to be consistent that they want Nova Lake back on their nodes because they can't afford to keep paying TSMC. Again, this rumor comes out right after we learned Pat botched the relationship with TSMC. I think there's your answer. Also, I could have made this a main story, but it's a big news week, so I didn't feel the need to. I leaked a picture of the RTX 5080 die. So that is out there, people. If you missed that video, I also confirmed that, to me, seems like the RTX 5080 laptop edition will also use the GB203 die, just like the desktop variant, but probably be cut down by like 30%. Or like this will be the worst yields put on laptop with 16 gigabytes. But now it's going to be 16, not 12 gigabytes. The 5090 will have 24 gigabytes. And yeah, we know what the die looks like.
Slightly better than what I would expect.
What do you think those laptops are going to cost, though, Dan?
I don't know, $3,000.
Like, exactly. So let's see what it costs first. Not hearing good things. Hardware Busters is alleging he toured I think a factory that he heard from people there that the 5080 is going to be 16 gigabytes, 400 watts, 15% faster than the 4080.
Doesn't sound very good.
If it's $999, it's like, all right,
okay,
15% uplift in price performance with better ray tracing. Okay, whatever. But if it's $1,200, like I'm hearing, I mean, it's It might be like less price performance than the 4080 Super. Like, what a joke. Again, I think it's like, yeah, I don't know. Like, if you have the money, the 5090 is for those people. But there's a reason me and Brian agreed on the last episode. RDNA 4 maybe will be fun. If you don't need a new GPU now, that might be worth it. That's my opinion. He doesn't have any faith in AMD. You know, that's his opinion. But when it comes to Blackwell, he's like, I don't think the price performance is being there from what I'm hearing, man. So, yeah, I don't know. If you're in the mid-range, great deals, especially on used stuff right now. Maybe a little worth waiting for RDNA 4. If you're looking for super high end, though, unless it's the 5090, I don't really see price performance getting better anytime soon. I don't think you should wait.
Yeah.
This is big. Not much we have to say. My reaction to this was, oh, that hadn't happened yet. Nvidia has taken Intel's spot on the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Again, I was shocked that hadn't already happened.
Yeah, I don't know how often they replace companies on the Dow Jones, I guess, but yeah, if they're representative for the semiconductor industry, yeah, Nvidia makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And then I saw this: a security flaw was found in Nvidia GeForce GPUs, all of them. So maybe update drivers if you have that. Yeah, I just saw that the last minute and thought we should include it. All right, now let us move on to the final reader mails here. Techno writes in and says, what if ARC was just a 3D chess move to force game devs to support Intel's iGPUs on games? Considering the driver issues the A770 had, this has also likely improved gaming performance on the iGPUs too. Yes, this is mostly a joke. You know, I just really use this as an opportunity to bring up something that I've noticed. A lot of the people that badmouth this channel at WCCF Tech don't have the balls to quote that much, which is that Pat Gelsinger nerds just said that they are not focusing on dedicated graphics moving forward. This is an undercovered story that I think there's a lot of embarrassed people. I'll call back in some of my notes here. There's a few more expletives than I think I'm actually going to end up saying. But guys, go watch my Intel has effectively, underline the word, effectively canceled ARC. I
think where you basically
I said Battlemage was going to come out. I said Battlemage would come out. There might be a single Celestial die, but it's going to be a winding down of ARC. It's not going to be an up like they go A770, and then there's something that competes with the 5080, and then something that competes with the 6090. It's going to be a downward winding down of the stuff they've already been working on for years because they're already halfway done. Pat basically just said that they're not focusing on dedicated GPUs much in the future, which they've already only made 2 dies last gen. So what do you think that means? I mean, they're winding it down, people. They're winding it down. I know the people that badmouth this channel will never admit when they're wrong and yet have to make a wall of shame about even opinions I'm wrong about that I never said I was sure about. But I don't know. Hopefully there will be some amount of credibility or accountability here of like, guys, I really did talk to people all over Intel, put this report together. Now, Pat's saying it out loud. The one thing that Pat said that pissed me off, though, was he said there will be less demand for GPUs in the future. Yeah, your shitty GPUs, dude. Okay, NVIDIA's killing it. That's not true.
Yes, that's why I'm canceling it. It's because nobody is going to use GPUs anymore, not because we can't make a single thing that works well.
Yeah, I don't know. It's complete nonsense. All right. Oliver1350 writes, and it says, someone took a framework mainboard and battery and built a handheld around this. See the article below. Do you think the swappable SoC and swappable mainboard strategy can make premium handhelds more interesting to the market at large? Could this become a Steam console with appropriate unlocked power and a massive supplemental cooling for a docked performance mode? Yeah, I saw this. It looks awesome. I mean, you're telling me you can take a framework motherboard, fit it in a handheld that's actually as portable as a Steam Deck, and it works.
Yeah,
much more likely to get that than a Steam Deck, especially if I can install SteamOS on it. I'd say that's why you would be buying the Steam Deck, though. You're buying it for their operating system that actually works.
Yeah, I do think, and for the question of it, like this being a viable product, when I see this stuff like with swappable components in like a case, I always think it looks like a cool idea. But clearly somewhere, some market analytics show like this isn't a thing that would sell because it always ends up being some niche product that someone builds for themselves because they want it to exist.
Yeah, like Framework's
I just
doing
doubt there's much
okay,
demand for it.
but I doubt it would.
Yeah, Framework's
I
doing
doubt
well,
it would
to be
make
fair.
sense. Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe they could try to. I mean, they have all of the modular parts. Maybe they could just make a handheld. But this is where 3D printing comes in and gets much more interesting to me. I just wonder if, like, in 10 years, you're going to have like a fee you can pay, and then they will maybe even help with AI. They can just design the laptop you actually want and put a motherboard in it.
Yeah,
I would love
mean,
that.
Yeah, that definitely could be a thing in the future. I mean, assuming
You could have an AI optimized algorithm that goes, how big do you want it to be? What motherboard, what CPU, and then a battery, and then it optimizes the space and prints the chassis to put everything in the smallest amount of space. Now, you'd still have to worry about R&D and like, yeah, you're not doing any R&D. You don't know if the way you optimize this is going to overheat, but you could do it.
Yeah. The one thing I never know with these things is, I mean, I'm assuming the 3D printer resin or plastic is getting a lot better in quality now because that would be the that would be the thing. Like you wouldn't want it to feel like cheap plastic.
Yeah.
But I'm sure somebody in the comments who owns a 3D printer will come in and write about how great plastic is now.
And remember, there's always deals on 3D printers at Micro Center. Fault AI writes and it says, when will Nintendo announce the Switch 2? When should we expect them to release it? It just seems like Nintendo is doing side quests, like announcing an alarm clock. I saw that for $100. A music streaming app. I had to look this up. Not getting good reviews. And they even announced a long-awaited port for Xenoblade Chronicles for the Switch. I don't know, like, the Switch 2 was supposed to come out a year ago. I had a short about it. It was reported on the news that we were talking about this. Other people said the same thing. I believe it was a guest who corroborated what I said as being true. I don't know. It should launch by March or something. They're really dragging this one out. What I was trying to look up is how are Switch sales according to VG charts. I don't really ever use this anymore.
Do people still train?
It's underselling the PS5. So, I mean, the sales are starting to slow finally, it looks like to me. Finally. Good Lord. Although in Japan, according to VG charts, it's outselling the PS4 like PS5 5 to 1. So,
a very different market in Japan.
Maybe, yeah, they just look at that and go, hey, we know even if it launches a year or two late and is lower performance for the year or just lower everything for the year compared to what it would have been. We just know that what it really needs, because it's Nintendo, is an insane launch lineup, fanfare, and to be super polished because it's going to sell in Japan, guys. The Switch is outside of PS5 5 to 1.
Yeah, it would have been such a good holiday season for them.
It would have been a very good. Economy is booming. People are stressed out. Travel, it's a portable console. Travel's like all-time highs this year. Would have been a really good year for a Switch 2.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll maybe see an announcement in January. I feel like that's a weird month to announce the Switch, but who knows?
Who knows indeed. Well, one thing I do know is that we are done with this episode, though, and I want to thank you, Dan, for joining me on it. Any final words? Well, no, wait. Let me do I always do it like twice. Let me do the shilling and then. So please remember to like the video, share it. Sharing helps a ton, by the way, especially if you share it early with people and especially like when we put out the shorts later, share those clips. That gets people to notice it and go back to it and fuels a longer life for the content. Also, make sure you're subscribed to the Moore's Law is Dead YouTube channel and ring that bell button so that you actually see the upcoming content. Also, again, subscribing does help the algorithm a lot. It does promote growth. It does make it easier for us to get more and more big guests. And then, make sure you try to support us on Patreon as well. I mean, Patreon is the number one way to support the channel. Do that. If you want to show support, even the lowest $2 tier, you'll get access to Die Shrinks. We just put out a couple of fantastic ones that have a lot of discussion going on. You can talk with us in the Discord at the lowest tier too. After Die Shrinks come out, after Broken Silicons come out, higher tiers get access to more stuff. Again, there's hundreds of pieces of ad-free content out there for you if you support us on Patreon. Please consider supporting there with the highest tier that you can easily afford. And otherwise, damn, any last words?
No, I don't think so.
Good. I'm glad I asked. So have a great week, everybody.
Bye.
This podcast was brought to you by the YouTube channel and website Moore's Law is Dead. Moore's Law is Dead and Broken Silicon are trademarks of their creator, Tom. That guy is me, and I am indeed the creator, editor, writer, and showrunner of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, videos, articles, and other media. However, it's not just me. Moore's Law is Dead is a team, with Broken Silicon co-hosted by my brother Dan, audio editing by Gerard Cortez, renders being done by the industrial designer Jean-Philippe Clermont, and special assistance is also provided by Carbon Cry and Kerry No Sugata as well. Find all of our information at www.mooreslawsdead.com on the About/Support page. In the event you do want to hire me for consulting work, hire Gerard for audio work, hire Jean-Philippe for industrial design work, or you're interested in working with Carbon Cry or Kerry No Sugata as well. You can also find our long-term sponsors on that page if you want to show them some love for putting food on our tables. Or you can also mail us some love. You can send letters or hardware donations to the following address: Moore's Law is Dead, P.O. Box 60632 in Nashville, Tennessee, zip code 37206. Although, to be honest, the best way to show Moore's Law is Dead some love is to support us on Patreon. Patrons are what makes Moore's Law is Dead content truly possible. Every month, and really every day, depending on who you're talking about, me, Gerard, Dan, and Jean-Philippe are working tirelessly to provide a steady stream of content that we could not keep doing unless we knew the work was possible without being reliant on sponsors dictating every little thing we put out. Don't get us wrong. We love our sponsors, but we love directly working for you, our fans, much more. If you have any extra money, even a couple free dollars a month, consider supporting us directly on Patreon. Those couple of monthly dollars will get you access to the exclusive podcast Die Shrink, voting on subjects of future podcast episodes, the ability to ask guests questions, and of course, access to the Moore's Law is Dead Discord full of like-minded people who I am sure would love to meet you. I am one of them. Additionally, higher tiers get access to early, ad-free episodes of Broken Silicon, the ability to ask questions in all Broken Silicon episodes and Loose Ends live streams ahead of the recording, and the entire back catalog of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, in addition to having thanks in the credits of videos and podcasts depending on the tier, with other perks available as well. And hey, if you cannot afford to support us directly every month, please do share Moore's Law is Dead videos and podcasts with friends and family, and on social media and websites like Reddit. And give Broken Silicon a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast app of choice. All of this does really help us so much. But like I said, this podcast would not be possible without the patrons directly providing predictable and reliable support every month. And so now it is time to give a personal thanks to the greatest of the fans. The following supporters are at the 10 gigahertz or higher supported levels: Brad Medlin, Drina Full, Zegis, Daniel D, Deke, Nicholas Buckner, Aaron Close, Jan Rauner, Daniel High, GZ Ziggy, MJB1, SNES Chalmers, Jim Ferriero, Valko Malev, Toka, Jensen Wang, Gergios Acker, Sarcastro, Chris Strick, Compressed AI Blocks, 3DS Boy 08, Hal Booma, Shredbird, Holden Mobley, Sammy Malas, Jordan Simkovic, Julian Leak, The Boss Haas, Jonathan, Chrysantine, Jake223, Jake Martin, Slicky, Nithra Sink, Meat and Pork, Tim Robb, Ian Clifford, Travis Gooding, Mad, Zootsuit Taylor, Stephen Coates, Greg, Michael McGee, Patty Cakes, Gamers Unite, Amiable Chief, Mark Mitchell, Tommy, I Should, Mark Raidmaker, James Anderson, Jamie Witters, Cole Addict, Cameron, Henry Zhang, Wesley Sager, Michelle Pell, Hexapuma, Reginald Ari, Teak Autumn, Mai Sharona, Jeff Sedler, Winwing, Winstar, Corey Leonard, James I, Raider, Little Germany, JSMMH, Shay, Milton, Melodic Warrior, Brett Jones, Chuck Glidden, McDaffie, Stephen Dick, Jave Schultz, Austin Haggerty, Justin Bustle, Jofid, Brian Scanlon, Hardland, Jensen Angima, Joseph Kelly, Slushpaw, Himsa Gung, Niels Val Verga, Scissorfo 7771, The Forbidden Juice, Brian Wright, RB Racer, AC, Alex Vega, Dr. J Mad, Freedy, Michael Cozy, John Swin, Crystal Joe, Albergun, Keekum, Solarized 80, Jeffrey Gentleman, Thalo 215, Matthew Marlowe, Brian P. Sprutnik, Hoodat 42, Figuff, Heguk, Cornster 671, Penta Winterhell, Richard Angel of Cake, Mr. Tiger, John Wick Boomstick, Curry King 3, Porcelain Oats, Nick Mania, Sakosha, Armand Vakatura, Rye, Chili, Chill Bulls, and State Farm Snake. And of course, thank you to Sahara for the music.